Reptilians, welcome back to my channel. So first of all, this is holiday week, so Merry Christmas to you, or Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever it is you celebrate. If you don't celebrate any holidays, happy vacation, happy week, I don't know, happy whatever your holiday is to you. Christmas is kind of super stressful for me, so sorry if I have been slacking in responding to comments, things like that. I have been incredibly stressed out and going crazy. So sorry about that. This week's video, we are going to talk all about the pros and cons of owning a pet. This is not necessarily the video that I wanted to do this week, but again, I'm very stressed out and my ability to plan these kinds of things is terrible. So if there's not a video next week, that is why. I'm fine. But anyways, let's get to the pros and cons of owning a pet. First of all, we are going to talk about the pros for you as the human. The first one is obviously companionship. Pets, reptiles, dogs, cats, rodents, birds, whatever your choice of pet is, it's going to provide you with companionship. That in itself is a huge pro to having an animal because you're never lonely. You always have something there with you. Even if you are alone, you're not actually lonely. You have that companionship. You have someone that you can talk to. They don't understand what you're saying, but you do still have that venting ability. And if you're having a bad day, you have something there to cuddle you and love you. Now, that animal may not necessarily be able to feel love for you, but as humans, we are social creatures, so being able to give that love to something else a lot of times helps with just everyday life and functioning. And that leads us to mental health, and these two kind of just feed off of each other. It's long been known that animals are wonderful for mental health. That's why we have emotional support animals. And any animal can be there for emotional support. If you are feeling stressed out, you can come home and pet your dog, and that releases oxytocin and that lowers stress levels. Something as simple as sitting in front of a fish tank and watching the fish has been shown to decrease stress levels because you're sitting there and you're calm and your animal is calming you down. And mental health wise, having something like a dog can make you feel safer. If you are an anxious person and you might be worried about someone, I don't know, coming into your house or coming up to you when you're walking down the street, if you have a large dog, then most of the time that's going to help you feel safer, which again is good for mental health. They also can be good for physical health. Again, if you have a dog, you're going to be taking that dog for walks. You're going to be taking that dog to the dog park, and if you're taking your dog out, that means you're walking too, and that means you're gonna be healthier. Having animals in your house has actually been shown to help increase a child's immune system because animals have foreign bacteria on their bodies. Introducing that into your house is teaching your child's immune system to fight things, and it could strengthen that immune system. And kind of playing into that mental health one as well, owning pets has also been shown to lower people's blood pressure and heart rate, so that is making you more physically healthy as well. Contrary to what some people believe, that people with a bunch of animals just stay in their house all day, animals can actually help you make friends. If you are into reptiles, there's whole reptile communities out there, this being one of them, where you can go and freely talk about how much you love those reptiles, and you can very quickly make new friends. If you have a dog and you are taking them on walks or to the dog park, you're going to be interacting with other humans with dogs. Having something in common to talk about when you're making new friends is kind of super important. In addition, owning animals also teaches people compassion, and compassion is definitely important when you are trying to make new friends. And lastly, on this human side of the pros, having animals also teaches responsibility. This is super huge. This is one of the biggest reasons why parents will get kids pet reptiles, because reptiles are pretty easy, but you still have to take care of them, and it does very well in teaching those kids responsibility. It very quickly teaches kids and adults too, that animal depends on you, that animal needs you to survive. You have to feed it, you have to water it, you have to change its lighting and substrate, or take it for walks, take it in the backyard to play. You have to do those things to keep the animal healthy, and that very quickly can teach you responsibility. And now for the cons for you as a person. These are going to be very similar to my cons of a bearded dragons list, but we're here. So the cons for you of owning a pet is going to be, number one, they are very time consuming. No matter what animal you get, that animal is going to have to be fed and given water. It's going to have to be cleaned, or its cage is going to have to be cleaned. It's going to have to be taken out for walks or handled. It's going to take some time, and if you are already a very, very busy person, it's going to make this whole thing a lot harder. You're going to have to find time to squeeze those animals in as well. Money. Animals, no matter what you get, are expensive. If you get something on the furry end like a dog, they're gonna need dog food, they're gonna need dog toys, maybe even to go to a groomer and to go to the vet. If you get reptiles or rodents, they're gonna need food, they're gonna need their substrates changed, they're gonna need to go to the vet. There are a lot of costs associated with any animal that you get, so that can be a pretty big con, especially if you are doing something like rescuing an animal. Rescue animals a lot of times have to go to the vet anyway, so that is an immediate cost that happens. So just keep in mind that animals are expensive and they're gonna cost you some money other than that initial purchase price. Back to responsibility. So while pets are wonderful for teaching that responsibility, they also are a responsibility. You're going to have to, like I said, clean those tanks, make sure to feed them. This kind of goes into that time consuming thing. This is a responsibility. This is an animal that depends on you to survive. You have to take care of it, and sometimes people don't want responsibilities. This responsibility can also do things like making it harder for you to travel, and especially if you are doing reptiles, rodents, any kind of non-conventional pet, finding pet care for those animals is going to be a lot more difficult. So that is another responsibility that would be on you, because you can't really travel as much with reptiles like you could a dog or a cat. So just keep that in mind as well. That is a huge responsibility, and it's going to take up a lot of time and effort in your life to keep up with that animal. Stress. Just as these animals can help you with stress, they can also cause a lot of stress. If your animal stops eating for any reason, even if they're not sick and they just decided to stop eating, if they get injured, if they are not shedding properly, any little indicator in a pet owner's life is cause for panic, and it's cause for stress. So keep that in mind. If you are a very stressed out person like I am, pets can in fact cause an increase in those stress levels. And the last con of owning a pet is loss. Unfortunately, these pets that we get, we grow very, very attached to them, and sometimes we lose them, and that can be hard on anyone. This is by far not a reason not to get an animal, but it is something that you should keep in mind. It is something that happens, and it is devastating. So definitely, I feel like that is a con for you as the pet owner to keep in mind. Now we're going to talk a little bit about pros and cons for the animal itself and for the environment. So first of all, pros. One of the biggest pros for the animals themselves, in my opinion, is the fact that owning exotic animals like reptiles can actually help to save populations of animals that might not be able to survive otherwise. So a couple of examples here, my two favorite examples, the ones that I always use. Number one, the crested gecko. Crested geckos were discovered in the 1800s. Then they were just gone. No one could find anymore, and scientists just assumed that they were extinct until 1994, when after some really bad storms, they found a bunch of them out of nowhere. So for a long time, these guys were thought to be extinct, and that's crazy for this super common pet. Crested geckos are everywhere now, and that's absolutely crazy to me that we're able to save an entire population, maybe not save them in the wild, but just save their species from extinction just by keeping them in captivity and breeding them. Another example is the axolotl. Axolotls in the wild are actually critically endangered.
Sorry. Sam, come on.
Another example of this is the axolotl. Axolotls are a super common pet. They're everywhere. A lot of reptile shows that I go to, I see them selling axolotls, but these guys are actually critically endangered in the wild. This is due to a couple of different reasons, including pollution and them being eaten, but in captivity, they thrive, and so many people get these awesome little salamanders as pets and don't even know that they're actually critically endangered in the wild. So to me, that is a huge pro to keeping reptiles, is literally possibly saving whole species. Next up, increased lifespans due to being kept in captivity. Now, this one makes a lot of sense when you think about it. In the wild, these animals are exposed to predators and infections and things that go untreated. So of course their lifespans are much shorter, where in captivity we are taking care of these animals. We're making sure that they eat when they're supposed to eat. We are making sure to manually bump up humidity when reptiles are shedding. So a big example here, in captivity, ball pythons live 20 to 30 years. In the wild, they only live for about 10 on average. That is double and triple the amount of time that that animal would live in the wild. And this goes for a vast majority of reptiles. And to me, that is awesome that we are able to take care of these animals so well that their lifespans are increasing. Animal education. So by keeping animals in captivity, especially reptiles, exotic animals, we are able to educate other people that may be scared of these animals, and we're able to get rid of that animal prejudice, if you will, where people are immediately like, oh no, scaly or spiders or whatever, it's not a dog, so I don't like it. We're able to get rid of that, and by getting rid of that, it makes it much easier for things like conserving environments or just protecting animals in general, because it lessens that fear of the unknown. So where 5-10 years ago someone may have seen a snake and instantly killed it, with education and without that stigma and that panic of just seeing a snake, that person may end up not killing that random snake that probably wasn't venomous to begin with, and that snake can go on its merry life and keep rodent populations down or whatever it eats, and it doesn't mess with the ecosystem. So I definitely feel that animal education is super important pro for animals and their environments. Lastly on this side is research. So I'm not talking about researching on animals like animal testing here. I'm talking more along the lines of just researching animals to learn more about them. And this is something that scientists are able to do a lot, and they are more willing to do it since more and more people are owning these animals. For example, recently a study was done on how smart a blue-tongued skink baby is versus an adult. They basically found out that blue-tongued skink babies are born smart. Their learning abilities when they are born are basically the same as when they are adults, which is crazy. That research kind of just allows us to better care for the animals and to know more about what's going on in our pets' heads to care for them correctly. That is just obviously a simple little cutesy study that was done, but I thought it was important to throw in this list of pros for animals and their environments. On to the cons. So the first con, and the biggest one in my opinion, is overselling pets at big chain pet stores or anywhere really that are bred in reptile mills, puppy mills, anything like that. People want to make money, and one of the easiest ways to make money off of animals is by buying from these mills, because they can buy in large quantities and selling at a much higher price, and they make a lot of money off of that, unfortunately. So when that happens, number one, those animals are being kept in terrible conditions in those mills, but since they want that money, that also means that they don't really care about the quality of the animal. They are also selling very sick animals, and they're selling them to people with very little knowledge of how to take care of that animal, which unfortunately results in a lot of animal deaths every single year. But on a positive note there, those same big chain pet stores used to get things like dogs from puppy mills, and to my knowledge, that is not not something that they do anymore. They now hold shelter days or sell animals that they get from local shelters, and that's because people kept speaking out against it and that behavior stopped. So hopefully in the future this overselling of these animals won't be a problem anymore because people are non-stop speaking out about it. Next up is animal morphs and breeds that are bred solely to be cute, and they have very serious problems that don't allow them to thrive in life. Now, we all know multiples of these, and I'm not going to name any because not a controversial person here, but when we breed animals like that just for the enjoyment of humans without thinking about the animal's welfare, that's when it becomes a much bigger problem and definitely a con for those poor animals that may not be able to eat correctly or breathe correctly or even just function with basic things like walking. Not much more to explain there, just overexploitation. So one big issue is harvesting a whole lot of wild caught animals to sell, because again, making money going and getting wild caught animals and having them imported cost very little, and then you can mark those prices up like crazy and make a whole lot of money. So this is unfortunately something that happens non-stop, but when you start taking too many, then that's when you start messing with numbers of that species in those regions. So a lot of times this is done illegally, so that means that they're not paying attention to those numbers. Most of the time, the people that import these animals have no idea how many of that animal even exist in the wild, and this has been shown with monitor species that were up for sale before they were even scientifically named and documented. Not really paying attention there, and that can quickly lead to plummeting numbers in animals in their natural environments. And last con for the animals and environment are invasive species. I did a whole video about the invasive species in Florida. It is just what it sounds like. People get these animals and they are very ill prepared to take care of them, and let's say they got an iguana as a baby and then it grows up to be huge and they don't know what to do with it, so people sometimes release them, or when they're being imported from other countries, they are being accidentally or not accidentally released into the wild. And in places like Florida, where the climate is perfect for reptiles, those species numbers drastically go up and mess up an entire ecosystem. That is a super giant con for the environment because invasive species can destroy whole ecosystems. But that is all I have for this week, guys. I hope that that was comprehensible. Like I said, this has been a very stressful week, so my brain is operating at about 75%. I will make sure to leave my sources down below, just in case I made a mistake with any of that information. But that's it. I hope you have wonderful holidays. As always, if you are not already, please feel free to follow me on my other socials and like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications every single time I put out a new video, which is every Sunday. Huge thank yous and shout outs to CDog22 for following me on Instagram, going through and liking a whole bunch of my stuff. Thank you so much. You are the bee's knees. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye. Okay, next.